Thank you for joining us, Mr. Bolaji Balogun, MD, CEO, Chapel Hill Denham Group. As a member of the visioning team, what is the importance or what was the idea behind having the Nigerian debt capital market workshop?
Essentially, over the last 12 or 15 years, there's been a significant amount of activity done to develop our local domestic debt market. And we have made tremendous progress, but we also recognize that these markets have not necessarily grown to their full potential. Secondary market liquidity remains a big issue. The inability for corporates to utilize the markets as much as the sovereign or subnationals have done remains a very, very substantial issue. Some of the infrastructure around debt issuance, around distribution in the market can certainly do with greater fluidity. And when we think about the significance of financing, that government Nigeria, corporate Nigeria will require over the next few years, I think we all recognize that we have one good opportunity to try and solve this. What we have all done is to work under the leadership of FMDQ. Basically, we've got the IFC committed to this process, and the IFC have been an integral part of helping to develop our local debt markets. The IFC itself has pioneered issuance in these local markets by an internationally rated organization when they issued their first Niger bond. And we thought that if we could bring their unique understanding of developing, helping a number of economies globally to develop large domestic debt capital markets to the process, with the SEC very much a critical part of that, that we had one really good opportunity to try and get everybody to the table. If I took one segment alone, Nigeria needs to finance, somewhere around $30 billion a year of infrastructure over the next 20 years, just to even catch up, in terms of, reinvesting it in its infrastructure. And this is infrastructure from power, to rail, to roads, to airports. And when you think about the traditional way in which we have done so, we either use banking markets or we use, multilateral agencies, or sometimes, we use, dollar facilities. Infrastructure in the real sense of it should be financed, ideally in local currency, because often the revenue take is in local currency, should be financed, through domestic capital markets, either by way of infrastructure bonds or through Naira-denominated infrastructure funds. And all of those opportunities are capital markets, oriented, rather than banking market oriented. The other final driver, obviously, is the reality that at some point, sooner rather than later, and we expect sometime within the next, 24 months or so, Nigeria's banks, will now be obliged to sign up to Basel III. And Basel III clearly is quite punitive, of carrying a number of things on banks' balance sheets, which we normally do today. The banks, in Nigeria to some extent, will therefore find that, capital is an extremely valuable commodity, and the things that they carry on their balance sheets actually need to be disaggregated and intermediated, into capital markets. And this is why it becomes absolutely essential that we seize this opportunity. I think if we do, we will put capital markets front and center of this administration's objectives. And for the first time, government, will recognize the importance of capital markets as a natural financing partner. But we will also have created a market that ensures that all of Nigeria's, major corporates are able to finance expansion projects, are able to finance their other capital needs, easily in local currency within these markets.
The structure of the workshop shows that there was a pre-workshop ahead of the main workshop coming up next week. Can you just enlighten us on why there was a need to have a pre-workshop ahead of this workshop?
I think the pre-workshop served a number of purposes. One, it ensured that we had some alignment between all the various stakeholders, and there's several stakeholders. So there's a regulator, there are intermediaries, there are issuers, there's a buy side. And I think that, the workshop tried to ensure that we got some alignment. Everybody agreed that, we all needed to work together to develop, a strong, virile domestic bond market. But everyone also recognized what each, specific stakeholders' interests were, and what we have to do is to find the common ground, among all of ourselves, and it was useful in that sense. So it was a bit of a rehearsal, but it was also very, very important in terms of engendering alignment. And it also ensured that, as locals, we will have, a whole load of non-residents involved at the workshop itself. But this was an opportunity for us to, sit in a room, deal with our issues among ourselves, and ensure that, we're really, focused on one single cause, which is a much bigger debt market than we have today.
Thank you. Finally, so how does the visioning team intend to take this forward or bring this home? Obviously, there are going to be decisions and resolutions taken from this workshop. How does the visioning team intend to implement this?
I think the very simple approach that we want to take is that we want to narrow the delta between our talk and our delivery. Every time that you're successful in this market, it's about narrowing, that difference. We all know what the problems are. We're all, very, very clear, even as to what the solutions are. But how do you move or transition from talking, to making it happen? So it will be about deliverables. It will be about responsible parties. It will be about timelines for those deliverables. And then I think we must also set a discipline where we have an opportunity to gather perhaps in another 6 months and assess where we are in terms of progress, and probably on the 12 months anniversary and say, this was what we said last year, what have we achieved by now? And I think if we've made a lot of traction, the beneficiary will be corporate and government Nigeria, and all Nigerians for that matter. And that's the real benefit and value of this workshop. So I think in summary, we expect a very, very strong attendance. We expect, the SEC to be very strongly present there. All market participants, from the buy side, to intermediaries, to those at the secondary market as well as those at, the primary market end. I think that, this requires a collaboration of a variety of entities. We're very grateful for the support that we've received from the IFC and the SEC. And I think we will have 2 very, very productive days that will be of tremendous value for our country, for our corporates, and ultimately anything that brings, particularly at a time of low oil prices, significant financing capacity to Nigeria is something that we must all embrace. Thank you.